Afternoon, it's 8 o'clock, and it's Dialogue with Dozell, Monday nights, 8 o'clock right here on YouTube and Facebook's Live, 8 o'clock every Monday night. We started this thing during the heart of the pandemic, and we've been rolling strong ever since. Y'all won't let us quit it. So we're going to continue to do what we do, and that's what we're doing tonight. Dialogue with Dozell is coming on yours. They used to say in the old days of radio on your showgram. I'm flying solo tonight as far as a co-host. My main man, my co-pilot, KV Kim Varner, he's ironically in a training. He's training, and it looks like every time he's near and I can't be a part of it for one reason or another of my scheduling, he sends me a picture of somebody that he's with that I wish I was in their atmosphere. So the day early, he showed me a picture of Eric Spoelstra, the coach of the Miami Heat. They were teaching in the Heat's house today, as you may know, and we're going to have to get them on and talk about what they do. Q was one of my original guests when we started the show. Quentin Williams, their partners, they do diversity training to police departments, FBI, all law enforcement agencies across the nation, and they're in Miami several days a month, like a week at a time. They come down and do 3 or 4 days, and it just so happened that they did back-to-back this week, and I thought that he was going to be down next week. So they're in the Heat's house, and Eric Spoelstra, I remember last year around November, he said, come down. If you can't come down to the game with me tonight, man. I got tickets, and they always get tickets right at the mid point, at the halfway point, court size, halfway at the halfway point, and they're only like 2 or 3 seats behind where the team sit. And he gets the great tickets, and we were attending a funeral service that night, or a wake in Jacksonville. And on the way back, he started flooding me pictures. And one of the first pictures I saw was he was with my basketball hero, Dwayne Wade, who happened to have been down here in town that week. And so anyway, I'm doing this by myself tonight. Somewhere along the line, at some point, my dear friend Pastor Anthony Burrell is going to be joining. And we have got a topic tonight that it's not a whole lot of joking to do with tonight's topic. It is why we must vote. That's how to produce a candidate. It's it's how we must vote. And tonight's show it is directly, and the reason I couldn't get some of the people that I really wanted to get in, I'll be joining them tomorrow there in Mims, Florida, which is right outside of Titusville, where they are celebrating National Voter Registration Day. And some of you may know I do that on the side. So National Voter Registration Day, and they're celebrating strategically in Mims, Florida, which was the hometown, and the place where Mr. Harry, Mrs. Harry T. Moore resided. Harry T. Moore. And I want to open up tonight by giving you, yes, thank you. That's Mr. and Mrs. Harry T. Moore. And I want to just give you a little bit about their history. Harry Moore was born in the early 1900s. He settled there in Mims, Florida. He was educated at Bethune-Cookman University. He was a school teacher. And he was one of the nation's first civil rights recorded martyrs. I'm not talking about the people that were hanging in the post-slavery days and stuff like that. But once we had moved into post-Jim Crow in the civil rights era, he's one of the first people who was slain. He's one of the first martyrs of the civil rights movement. He settled in Brevard County, Florida, which is the Space Coast, Titusville, Melbourne, and Cocoa Beach, that area. Some of you may know Cocoa Beach from My Dream with Jeannie. And he did momentous voter registration. He led blacks in momentous voter registration campaigns. And on he and his wife's 25th anniversary, which was which was December the 25th, Christmas night of 1951, he and his wife were celebrating the anniversary and, of course, the holidays, and his house went up by way of a bomb. Mr. Moore, because MIMS did not have a medical facility that treated blacks at that time, Negroes at that time, Mr. Moore died en route to the closest hospital, which was over in Sanford, Florida. He died en route to Sanford, or shortly after getting to the hospital. Mrs. Harry Moore lived for 9 days after being in there for treatment, and she died after nine days. But they were the very first. He was a pioneer, one of the very first martyrs of the civil rights movement. Mr. and Mrs. Moore led voter registration drives in the Space Coast and throughout Florida. He established the first NAACP in Brevard County. He was a state officer of the state NAACP, serving as secretary, and he was just an outstanding individual. Now, there have been several efforts underway to bring people to justice for this murder. The FDLE, the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, had a case that they opened, but did not find anybody. The FBI checked into it. The Brevard County Sheriff's Office had their own opening, and the last time this case was opened was in the 90s. One governor said that he had initiated an investigation, and the investigation revealed that there were 4 Ku Klux Klansmen Ku Klux Klansmen that were responsible for Harry and Harriet Moore's deaths, but they were all deceased at the time. This was in the early 200s that discovery was allegedly made. But he was an outstanding individual, and tomorrow, to celebrate National Voter Registration Day, September the 20th, every year, I will be joining many of my Faith in Florida partners and other voter rights entities, where they're holding a news conference tomorrow in MIMS, Florida. And after the news conference, and if you're in the area, we would ask you to join us in MIMS, Florida tomorrow at 11 o'clock a.m. And then after the news conference, there's a schedule. After the news conference, there will be a tour of the Harry T. and Harriet V. Moore Cultural Center, which is a museum which kind of chronicles some of the stuff that they did for civil rights, particularly the Voter Rights Acts, and that will proceed directly after the 11 o'clock, right after the news conference tomorrow morning at there in MIMS. So we want to celebrate, and we want to talk about tonight. We want to talk about why you must vote. Why you must vote. It's inconceivable or unimaginable that people of color would ever let an opportunity to vote go by. The price has been too heavy. A lot of the images that we see of the civil rights movement, and we always look at this stuff during African American History Month in February, then we put those videos aside and we don't look at them again. But many of the protests that you saw, bull corners, bulldogs, biting black people, water hose being turned on, were in protest for the right to vote. Now, you ask me, when did black people get the right to vote? Well, we had the right to vote coming out of slavery. And in fact, there were some people that were elected to offices. But in order to vote, you had to pay, you had to endure horrendous tests, poll tests, pay poll taxes. You had, and as many black folk were were uneducated, had no real formal education coming out of slavery at that point. They knew if they put these tests and these quizzes, that oftentimes blacks would not be able to pass those tests, and then they would not give them the right to vote. And there were poll taxes. Everything was done to discourage the right to vote. Does that sound like anything we might have heard lately? Discouraging people, particularly people of color, with the right to vote. So that's what has happened. Um, the right to vote has been contested, and it has been contested for a long time. I very vividly remember President Lyndon Baines Johnson passing the Voter Rights Act, the Voters' Right Act, in 1965, which gave us the right to vote without we had the right to vote without having to go through all these horrendous tests and all of these horrendous quizzes and pay poll taxes or face anything. It literally just cleared the way for people of color to be able to vote. Now, it is unimaginable that this act had a date on it, and it ran out in, I think it was 2013, and the legislature has failed to extend it. Of course, with Mitch McConnell running the Senate, as he has much of the last 10 years, it would never even be brought up for a vote. Why would it not be brought up for a vote? Because African Americans are primarily they voted in the Democratic Party, and he did not want to empower the Democratic Party to be able to do just what it looked like it's about to do again, and that's gain support of the Senate. We pray that after these 4 years, he'll retire and we will never have to deal with him again. What he did to Barack Obama, and it really led to the tilting of the courts. I'm digressing a bit, but Mitch McConnell, when President Obama attempted to nominate Merrick Garland, our current Attorney General, to the Supreme Court, which really would have tied the court. It would have been at a 4-4 split at that time. He blocked the nomination, said he was waiting on the presidential election. This was early in the spring of 2016. This was very early in the spring of 2016 that opening occurred, and he blocked that vote. So the Supreme Court would go on and not withhold or not withhold the Voters' Rights Act. That's why then it became a legislative matter, and the legislature has not allowed it to happen. And of course, when this administration has tried to do it, it hasn't had the numbers in the House to pass it. So this is what we're dealing with. You say we live in a nation where everybody has equal rights. No. Check it out. Equal rights on paper, but in reality, no. Now, in Florida, as in most states now, Florida has given returning citizens, aka they've given returning citizens the right to vote. If you are a convicted felon in the state of Florida, you now can vote. There are only 3 stipulations that prevents you from voting. If murder was a part of your conviction, then you don't have that right to vote. If a sexual crime, if you have a sex crime as part of your criminal portfolio, your felony conviction, then it prevents you from voting. And also, if you owe the courts any monies by way of fines or fees, it blocks you from voting. But guess what? A lot of organizations have come together, and I maybe before the end of the show, I'll be able to put that website on here that have come together, and they now pay your fees. If your fine's not insurmountable, your fees are not a whole lot, court fees are not much, they pay your fees or get you on a plan to start paying it, so that now you can get your voters' right will be totally reestablished. Let me tell you what has happened in this state, and I'm going to talk about your illustrious governor shortly at the midway point. In this state, this governor, as in most southern states, most red states, have put the most ridiculously cruel, don't make sense at all. Uh, Voter restrictive, they restricted voting lines. For instance, if you're in line and someone brings you a glass of water, that person is guilty of almost a felony. Bringing you a glass of water while you're in line at the polls. You cannot stand in line. You cannot change out with people. They have just made voting just highly ridiculous. The attempt to vote. If you during the pandemic, we did a lot of voting by mail. They have highly restricted it. They have not cut it out, but it's all in a plan to deter people from voting. What has happened in this state is that I don't know if you ever knew it or not, but police officers are not allowed to go to the polls in uniform. You're not allowed to. You're not allowed to be in a poll in a voters in a poll, just like you cannot do voter. You cannot be doing assisting people by passing out literature so many feet from a polling area. The same thing occurs for policemen. They have to be, if they're in uniform, they cannot, you cannot have your badge displayed like a lot of detectives do. You cannot do that if on election day and you're near the polls. So what this governor has done, I'm talking about the guy in Tallahassee now, he has formed what is like unto a polls police that is they're so supposedly they are protecting the right voter integrity. I think they're called the Integrity Patrol. What they really are, they are a goon squad that has been commissioned in Tallahassee to intimidate, particularly ex-felons, to keep them from coming to the polls. And here's what really makes this a crazy thing: if you fill out a voter registration form, and that form, either you send it or a third party takes it to the supervisor of elections office, and the supervisor of elections office scrutinizes it to the point that they feel comfortable sending you a voter registration card, then why are you guilty? Why is the onus on the person who registers as opposed to the supervisor of election office? So he made 21 high-profile arrests during the primary and made a big deal out of it. And it's more than likely they're going to be thrown out of court because the contention of Amnesty International and other organizations are fighting on the part of those who were arrested, saying that the supervisors of election officers in their jurisdiction rendered them a card, and so that it's confusing. So they should not have a felony conviction against them, or a felony arrest should even stand against them because they were given a card to vote. So it's all an intimidation tactic. He cares less if you slap with another felony, if you go back to prison. He just want to deter you from voting. Why? Because many returning citizens are people of color. Examine the justice system, and you'll see that's exactly what we have. Many people of color are members of the justice. People of color are often many people who are returning citizens are people of color. So he has done this and set this up to intimidate them. But we press on, we continue on, and we continue to register voters that are qualified. No sex convictions, no murder convictions, and they owe the courts no money. I see my good friend Pastor Burrell is on. Pastor, hop on and join me in this conversation. How you doing,
Pastor,
sir?
I am doing fine. Thank God for you, man, and thank you for your patience. You know the issues I'm having with that vehicle of mine.
We all good. You coming on the right time, because I'm talking about and I know you have some input. I'm talking about I'm talking about what DeSantis did during the primaries, how he tried to intimidate voters, returning citizens, by arresting 20 people who were given voter registration cards. Were you up on that situation?
Yeah, nothing he does surprises me, uh, Pastor Dozell, and we just got to be vigilant. Amen. I think it was Charles Gambino told us to stay woke, and DeSantis is the king of the anti-woke campaign. So
That's right. Yes.
whatever he says, amen. I'm a preacher just like you, and the Bible says the night is far spent.
Yeah.
Amen. And the
Yeah.
next verse says, it's high time. Doc, it's high
Yes.
time, man. We got to, I just shake my head. I take my hat off to you and all of the wonderful people in faith in Florida in doing what you do. These last three elections, when DeSantis was elected, and both times when Rick Scott was elected, were won by razor thin majorities.
Yes. Yeah.
Razor
Yeah.
thin majorities.
Yeah.
And you know where I live. Man,
Yeah.
I wish I could have taken this iPad I'm on here tonight with you and just took a couple of his commercials when they told you that he was going to these people are telling us what they're gonna do.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
what more do we need to do, man, to get our folk to wake up? I don't know, man. Listen, if it were up to me, I would completely outlaw reality TV. Because we up on Snooki and Jersey Shore. And I'm dating myself. Because I know you got housewives and basketball wives and the preachers of so-and-so. Boy, we know all of what's going on there.
Yeah.
But I saw a film clip a couple of days ago. And this guy is going around doing videos and what do you call it? When it are not think tanks, but those
Oh, when
sessions
they
where you
when they do you're talking about groups, what are they called? I almost
focus groups.
focus groups. Focus
Doc, all
groups.
you had to
Yeah.
do is prompt me. You use
Yeah.
the word group.
Yeah. Focus groups.
Dozell, they had about 13 or 15 people around that table. And not a single one of them knew who that U.S. congressperson was.
Wow. Wow.
Man,
Yeah.
Dozell, I'm almost about to cry, Doc. I'm about to cry. We say it all the time. We beating a dead horse. But if you don't vote, don't complain.
Well, I mean, you talked about those razor thin elections, and what you're speaking right now, I deal with it firsthand. So on my report, my biweekly report, there's a thing that they want to know numbers, but they also want to know just as much what have you done to educate people about voting. Um, we lost. Well, let me say this. Uh, Scott defeated Nelson, I think 18,000 votes out of the whole state. The governor's race was decided by 30,000 votes. Had that Democratic candidate who came 30,000 votes short not have had the misfortune, he probably would be a shoe-in, because if you remember, they put the moratorium on felons voting just prior to the elections last year. Now felons are voting, but they have these restrictions. And just before you sign on, I was telling our audience how this governor has done everything with this intimidation patrol. It's called the Integrity Patrol. It's an intimidation patrol to try to keep ex-felons from registering by making them scared by the numbers that he has arrested already. So if we look at these numbers and we look at now, we have returning citizens voting. And if we went to the polls like we did during 2008 and 2012, people of color and young people for obvious reasons, if we went like that, we wouldn't have to worry about dealing with 4 more years of this idiocracy out of Tallahassee, which is a statement for a more national ambition, of course, that we know that he has. But before you sign on, also, I talked about Mr. Harriet T. and Mrs. Harriet Moore,
Yes, sir.
who tomorrow I will be at their cultural center for a news conference will be held in celebration of uh, National Voter Registration Day, and then we're proceeding to the Civil Rights Museum that he started. People pay the price for us to vote, and we simply cannot sit down on that price. I have people
Amen.
that, yeah, I think I missed one election since I've been in South Florida. It was an off-year election that's not where that is irrelevant and unimportant. I think I was out of town and didn't do an absentee ballot in time. But that's the only vote. And I'm not trying to pat myself on the back. I'm just thinking of your ancestors and mine who have paid, some of them, ultimate prices like the Moors have, simply that we might have a right to vote.
Amen. Now, if I'm not mistaken, that bombing took place on Christmas Day, didn't it?
Christmas Day, their 25th wedding anniversary.
Is
Christmas
is
Day.
is anything sacred?
No,
Is anything
no.
sacred? Let me tell you something. If they will bomb a church and kill 4 little girls, amen. And we know the history. We
Yeah.
know the history. They could go to church, sing, pray, listen to a sermon, and leave church and go and attend a lynching with
Doc,
a picnic basket in tow.
Doc,
Now,
don't
this
get
is
me,
American history.
yeah, don't get me started because I'll be glad to step in and talk about the hypocrisy of the Republican Party, the Southern Baptist Convention, and all of those right wing entities that are supposedly about evangelism and the salvation of souls and the releasing of the captives. Yet they're part of a party that holds poor people in captivity with rights to vote. We were just talking about, and you can elaborate on some of the restrictions that about even assisting people while they're in line for a drink. You can't even give them a drink of water in scorching heat while they're standing in line to vote. And it's just appalling.
Can't give them a folding chair to sit down, you know? And Dozell, I bet we could canvass every one of these people who wrote the laws, who in turn voted for those laws, and they are a member. Georgia is the famous example. They're a member of somebody's church. And sad to
Absolutely.
say, somebody's United Methodist Church, somebody's Southern Baptist Church. Now, by way of honesty, I am a part of the Southern Baptist Convention, you know. But listen, wrong is wrong. I say it this way: wrong is wrong if my mama's doing it,
All
you
right.
know.
All
And
right, Doc.
we need some prophetic people. We need some people to stand. You know, we went to Southern Seminary. Henry Barnett
Shh, don't say
risked
that too
his
loud.
career. He
Yes.
risked his career to bring Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. on that campus.
Yes. Yes.
And we said we teaching people about Jesus. You know, the last, the least, the lost, the left out. You know, uh, uh,
God's always got a
I,
ram in the bush.
oh yeah, I just shake my head, Dozell, because I'm far enough along in the game now that I say it like this: people ain't listening to what you say; they're looking at what you do.
Amen.
You know,
Amen.
because a whole lot
Amen.
of people talk a good game. You know,
Yeah.
God has a way of deputizing our soul singers and rhythm and blues singers. And
Yeah.
he had a prophet by the name of James Brown said, like a dull knife just ain't cutting. You're
Mm.
talking loud and ain't saying nothing.
Saying nothing.
You
Yes,
know,
sir.
man, come on. You know,
Yes, sir.
I don't, I'm past talking. You
Yeah.
know, when
Yeah.
are you gonna say? You know, I'm trying to think. I'm trying to think. Do I know anybody who has spoken up to uh, 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 DeSantis and Rubio and Rick Scott? Man, you see the games they playing. You see the stuff that
I'm
they
looking.
doing. Look at here. Rick Scott has spent all of the National Senate Republican committee's money, and he doesn't even have any money to support Rubio now. So Rubio has been forced to go on Fox News begging for some
I,
money in his race against
Val
Val
Demings.
Demings. But now here's what's going on. Dozell, our 2 senators and our governor all have aspirations to run for the presidency.
Uh,
So
uh, yeah,
Rick
Rubio
Scott
ran
ain't have no
last time.
problem with bankrupting the senatorial campaign fund, because that meant that he didn't have to give help and aid to his first perceived opponent, which
Yeah,
is Marco Rubio.
yeah.
Now, hey, he don't want to support uh, Ron DeSantis either. So if you can see the political machinations and shenanigans that take place, you know, open your eyes, open your eyes, open your
Doc,
eyes, you know.
Doc, we're gonna pick the conversation back up after this break. I want to say thank you. I didn't get a chance to properly thank you for signing on tonight. Um, the reason we couldn't get any of our heavy hitters in the area is that they have already descended upon Mims. I'll bite the bullet and get out of here early in the morning. I wanted to be in the studio tonight for the show to feel comfortable, and so they are having pre-meetings tonight, and they are caucusing in preparation for a big event tomorrow. But thank you, because I knew you're vast in your knowledge and history and everything. So we're coming right back, and we're going to deal with this, and we're going to deal with Mac's comments when we come right back. Let's hear a word from our sponsors. .com. They got all of your virtual needs. They're taking care of them. Your websiting, everything you need virtually. MogoGigaWorld.com. They got your back. Look what they do for us every week here on the Dialogue, and also for New Life Church Services. A beautiful platform nationwide, and we just are international, and we are just grateful for their services, and we're asking you to bring them on. Listen, before we resume the dialogue, tonight is a new segment, and really, believe it or not, you probably won't believe this, but I was saying to somebody earlier today. I said, since we started the dialogue to attract people who may not share the same perspective, you can't get on social media and blast them out or engage in political or sociological, ideological debates with them. Because that does not show that you are being objective. Now, it doesn't mean that you can't have an opinion, but it's best just not to go on and just blast. So we're able to bring occasionally people who share a divergent viewpoint, because we don't battle it out on social media together. But tonight, and really, I hope this one, we do Dang Dog, we do Are You Serious? And we do shout outs. Tonight we're introducing another one, and I really wish that we never have to use this again. But during this season and getting ready for the 2024 election, you're going to see this a lot out, I'm afraid. Tonight's segment is called You Are Despicable. Yes, you're despicable. You see who they are. That's that governor from Florida and that governor from Texas. Greg Abbott from Texas. Ron DeSantis from Florida. What you have been doing, along with this clown from Arizona, it has been absolutely despicable. Greg Abbott, it stands to reason that you, a person of a minority status, you have a physical handicap, and certainly no one would make fun or gain any joy out of that. But it looked like that it would cause you to be more compassionate, more loving, more outreaching, more concerned for what Pastor Burrell just outlined as the last, the least, and the left out. I understand that immigration is a problem. I know what it is like in Texas because I live in Florida. But what you have chosen to do is absolutely despicable. You're despicable, Governor Abbott. What you have done is you have piled hundreds of people on buses. You pile them on buses, and you ship them off to New York City, what you call a woke or a blue sanctuary city. And you just saw the mayor of New York City on, and you see these people, and you've told them that you're shipping them to other locations, and that there are jobs, there's clothing, there's food, and there's shelter awaiting them. These poor people hop on these buses, and they're literally dumped off on a street corner in New York City. Governor Abbott, you are despicable that you would use human beings to make a political point. You are absolutely despicable. Let's see this other clown, Ron DeSantis. There's so much that you are despicable for. You're despicable for telling people that they can't teach the history of slavery in this nation because it makes one group of people feel bad. How do you think black people have felt who not only, and I tell my good friend all the time, no, we're not enslaved now, but we live in slums because of the residual effects of slavery. Ron DeSantis, you've done so many things trying to out-Trump Trump that you are absolutely despicable. That you have grabbed people, packed them on planes, telling them that they're being shipped to Boston, only to be told at the 11th hour that they're actually being dumped off at Martha's Vineyard. You're despicable, Governor, that you would engage in almost human trafficking and almost child labor problems. That you act like you have grabbed people that were prisoners. What you have tricked and used treachery to deceive people who are escaping oppressive regimes, high gangs, murderous regimes. You have put these people and just dumped them off in a resort area. Now, I'm not at all excusing. I'm not at all excusing. Yes, the problem of immigration does have to be fixed. But for you to use human beings and make them pawns in your political game, Governor DeSantis, you're despicable. I saw your news conference. You thought it was a joke. You thought it was funny to say that they're being sent to woke areas. You have a campaign against wokeness. Yes, so they're being sent to liberal, blue state, Massachusetts, to Martha's Vineyard. What you see displayed here, Governor DeSantis, I'm sure that just really surprised you to no end. To see the good people of Martha's Vineyard, and I was there in April, hugging these people as they got off of their transportation, providing food for them, providing shelter for them, for providing clothing for them, and lodging, and making a way for them until they could get to where they were promised they would be going. It just goes to show you, we call it in spirituality, all things work together for the good for we that love the Lord. And that's what those people have displayed. Those people show what Jesus says, when you have reached out to the least of them, then you have reached out to me. But you, I don't want to ever hear you say anything about spirituality. You and your buddy over in Texas and Arizona, you are despicable. I hope we never have to do this again, Pastor. I hope we never have to use this. We've been
God bless you, sir.
Yeah, we've been given a series of shout outs, and I hope that we can continue to be back on that path. But I just had to call them. I got a whole show.
Let me take this opportunity, man. While we were on break and you were doing your monologue, I took the opportunity to look up some scripture verses dealing with aliens, foreigners, immigrants. Exodus 23:9. Do not oppress a foreigner. You yourself know how it feels to be foreigners, because you were foreigners in Egypt. In you, they have treated father and mother with contempt. In you, they have oppressed the foreigner, mistreated the fatherless and the widow. Ezekiel 22:7. Speaking of God, he defends the cause of the fatherless and the widow, and loves the foreigner residing among you, giving them food and clothing, and just on and on and on. Deuteronomy 24:14. Do not take advantage of a hired worker who is poor and needy, whether that worker is a fellow Israelite or a foreigner residing in one of your towns. I could go on and on and on. I'm convinced beyond a shadow of a doubt that these folk out here attending MAGA rallies and Turning Point and CPAC and all this, they might say God. You know, I mean, my pastor boy, Dr. Matt King Carter, God rest his soul. Man, I mean, if nothing else, he made you think. And when we start talking about, you know, I know we get lambasted for black theology but Dr. Carter said forthrightly that the oppressed and the oppressor don't worship the same God.
And
Man,
if don't make me go back into those days of black theology, but James Cone says this very emphatically: God is always on the side of the oppressed. God
the
is
underdog,
always on the
the
side of the oppressed.
underdog.
Yes, and
Yeah,
your scriptures just bear that out. Well, that's why I really don't want to hear anything that group has to say about spirituality or anything, because it's nowhere prevalent in any of their actions. Preacher sermon yesterday talked about the effect of the ed, the past tense, the action. Ed denotes action, and when your action is absolutely antithetical to your what you're verbalizing, man, just keep that jive to yourself, because it means nothing to me.
amen.
That goes to church conventions or denominations or politicians or my neighbor or anybody else. It has to be consistent. You can't tell me you need to stop crying about racism all the time when you are steady perpetuated. Why the Voters' Rights Act was not reinstated, why it was not reinstated. So I want to answer Mac's question, Pastor. Mac says that we must vote for a purpose of tangible benefits. So I don't know if Mac is saying that blacks in the Democratic Party, blacks have, we've been almost called as being sellouts to the Democratic Party because blacks in mass numbers vote Democratic and allegedly don't get anything in return. Now, I would like to. I don't agree with that, because I think this president has done everything possible to show you see more diversity in his cabinet. Well, just look at his vice president. You see more diversity in his cabinet that you've seen in any cabinet in history. And I'm not talking about the clowns that the previous president had around him, the few blacks that he had around him that were almost an embarrassment. And if you look at the candidates for Senate that he's endorsing now, poor guy in Georgia, man. I hope that the Ralph Warnock, Dr. Warnock, comes out victoriously. And then when he comes out victoriously, I hope that poor guy, Herschel Walker, will climb back somewhere and just lay low, because he has just embarrassed himself. And that's what this former president has put in front of us. So I hope that we think. I think what Mac is saying is that we don't just sell out to anybody. I've crossed over, and I know you have too, probably. I've crossed over for a candidate that was not in my party, but when I thought that he was for the best of my needs and my people's needs. That's what I've done in times past. But yes, we do pretty much vote democratically. Uh, so just I think that's what he's trying to say,
Well,
instead of policies and tangible benefits.
let me say this, for Dozell. Black people are not monolithic. You know, we don't all toe the same line. Uh, I am personally, I am anti-abortion. I believe it's wrong. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but I'm still registered as a Democrat. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
I still have my signs. I have a sign I know in my garage. When I worked in 2008 to support marriage being legally defined as between one man and one woman, you know,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I know other people do it, but I can't divorce what I preach and teach on Sunday and come out Monday through Saturday saying something else and all of that. I mean, man, one thing I know that we have to be consistent on who we are. But if you tell me that God is opposed to abortion and God is opposed to same-sex marriage, I can tell you that God opposes the exploitation of the poor.
Right.
You know, I
Right.
can tell you, man, God ain't pleased with this foolishness we putting down. You know, look at here, look at here. Last week when they passed this bill, one of the many things on it capped the price of insulin at $35.
Yeah.
Not a single, come on now, y'all hear me now, hear me tonight. Not a single Republican voted for that. Now you got to help me understand, because I know, especially if you are a senator from the South. You know, I say that thinking about the number of us, but it ain't just us. Diabetes ain't no black or white issue. You
Right.
know,
Right.
diabetes is becoming an epidemic
Yeah.
in this country. So
Yeah.
much so that we got to be careful when we use the term type 1 juvenile diabetes, because what used to strike as adult onset diabetes, type 2, man, you know, we got children 8, 9, and 10 years old now being diagnosed with diabetes. And it ain't no type 1, doc. It's because of our lifestyles, it's because of our diets, you know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And don't,
yes.
you cannot forget the hereditary factor. The
Oh yeah.
hereditary plays an awful lot in diabetes. Here's my frustration, and I think we're talking about what Mac is asking. I was trying to state on his concerns. Um, so the right has been pro-life and anti-abortion, and definitely can't knock that. They've been that all of, ever since Roe versus Wade, which came into effect during our lifetime 50 years ago. But once these children are here that are born to the last, the least, the left out, the black, the Hispanic poor, once these children are here, they do not want to have any programs or any assistance. Talking about the richest nation on the face of the planet, they have nothing. That they fight against anything that will benefit people. That same Rick Scott that you mentioned earlier, and this hits home to me, right, with both of us. He wants to take out Medicare and Social Security. So
And
what
presided over the largest Medicaid
fraud?
Medicare fraud in the history of this country,
And
with the big
so
giant company HCA, of which Plantation General is an HCA hospital. Westside Regional is an HCA hospital. You know, these folk can use the system, pimp the system, get rich off the system. You know, Doc, when a poor person gets help from the government, it's an entitlement. You know, all of these negative terms. Well,
right,
what do you call it when Ron DeSantis takes $12 million given to this state for the COVID-19 epidemic and uses it to fly people? Now, listen, in order to halfway tie to justify it, he had to fly them from Texas and make a stopover here in Florida. I guess he's using our $12 million.
wow.
And by that I mean taxpayer money. And then the plane proceeds on to Martha's Vineyard. Now, come
It,
on now. Come on.
it,
Come on.
it,
You
it's
telling me that we didn't have a better way to spend $12 million than to participate in a political stunt?
so, Doc. This is why we have to vote. We have to vote. I mean, some facts are so obvious when you look at these things that are happening in our state and in Texas right now, and the shenanigans that are taking place. You look at those and you say, "Oh my goodness! All I got to do is give me a pen so I can sign up to vote. I got to vote this kind of foolishness out. You don't have to, as a registrar, I do it with integrity. I don't lean people either way. I simply register them. If they ask questions, I gladly answer facts, trying to keep it straight down the line. Now, when I register these young people, these young students that are 16 and have not yet gotten they're not old enough to get their license, their registration cards, that at 18, they'll start receiving them. They'll say, what's a Democrat? What's a Republican? I'll say, well, Barack Obama was a Democrat. Kamala Harris is a Democrat. Joseph Biden was a Republican. I mean, a Democrat. Donald Trump was a Republican. And they don't go much further back than that. So I kind of give them an opportunity to assess and kind of make up their own minds as to what happened. Yeah, Mac just talked about Brett Favre. You know, what about him? And that was
Oh
a
man, oh
Republican
man, there you go.
administration.
I'm glad you say that because now you give me an
Yeah, that's
opportunity.
Mac. That's Mac.
Yeah, to say something that happened to me recently. I received a letter from the governor of Mississippi, and he was talking about protecting the rights of the unborn and abortion and everything. Okay, I want to try to read the letter, Dozell, but I know that your capital city doesn't even have drinking water.
Yeah.
But you write me about some abortion issue. Listen, man, do your job and fix the infrastructure in the capital city. Dozell, the issue is so bad, they couldn't even flush the toilets in the capital. They had porta potties. They had porta potties on the front lawn of the Capitol. And that same politician who's voting for all of this crazy stuff, you know what I'm saying? He couldn't go to the bathroom either. He had to go out there and use the porta potty. Now, I don't know, maybe you can't see it, but my mama said something wrong with that picture.
Brett Favre.
Let me tell you what Brett Favre did. Again, Mississippi receiving federal money. This lady, I think her last name is New, N-E-W. She overseeing this fund that had $77 million in it. They got a text message chain between her and the governor, former governor named Phil Bryant. The new governor now is named Tate Reeves. Got a text message chain between Phil Bryant. I wish I remember the lady's first name. Last name is New. But Phil Bryant, the former governor, Ms. New, and Brett Favre. Brett Favre's daughter is a scholarship athlete at his alma mater, the University of Southern Mississippi. Okay? He asked about some possible support to help out because his daughter is on a volleyball scholarship. Long story short, Dozell, they finagled $4.5 million. Went through the loop, around the corner, underneath, over top, and funneled $4.5 million to the University of Southern Mississippi to build a new volleyball stadium because his daughter plays on the volleyball team.
Wow.
Brett Favre is a multi-millionaire. Brett Favre could have paid for the volleyball stadium himself.
Well, he's actually he's paid all of those funds back, but I think $400,000 when it got exposed and the heat was on. But that's the hypocrisy that we talk about. So I want to just, because we're getting ready to close out, and man, every time this thing gets good, that hour slaps us upside the head. And I want to do something for Hispanic Awareness Month on the way out the doors today. But the show is entitled "Why We Must Vote." So it's incumbent that we raise a generation, that we don't let our young people. There is a video. It's not Killer Mike, but it is a video that a lot of the people that I work with take that around to show why we have to vote. It's a video by a rapper. He puts it on the terms of the young people why we must vote. And I'm just saying, for our returning citizens, for our young people, that's why I get so excited when I register somebody who's 16 years old, just eligible to get that pre-registration. And Lord knows, whenever I register a homeless, an unhoused person, and they go to that designated address and say, I got my voter registration card, when I see them again, it just does my heart all the world of good. Listen, we've done tonight we've tried to show you the obstacles that have been put in front of us to prevent us from voting. And you know there's a purpose for that, because they want to skew the slate as to how you vote. But we want to ask you, if you're not registered to vote, please register to vote. Please, too much blood has been shed. Too many lives have been lost just for us to have this right. It's not a given. Right now, they're showing us it's not a given. They're doing everything to prevent us from voting. Go out and vote. 27% of Floridians voted in this past primary. We know a candidate right here in Broward County who lost an election where 200 plus votes were cast, lost that by 300 votes. Another 4%, and half of them had gone that way, or more than, if they're 75%, that person would have been elected. Listen, we have got to not let this precious gift go by. I knew, Pastor, you'd have a lot of perspective on that. On the way out the door, give us the last perspective on why we must vote.
Doc, you said something interesting tonight. Not only are you registering people to vote, but you are asked how you're educating voters. You know, I mean, you there's no excuse, Dozell. There's no excuse not to know what's going on around you. I mean, I think oppression can do strange things to you, but what it can do, it can make you so focused on the fact that life is hard that when the weekend comes, the OJ sang your theme song, "Living for the Weekend." You know what I'm saying? I remember in the third grade, a friend of mine used to say, "My day, uh, my day, Friday, my day, get high day." And in the third grade, we won't get high. Didn't know nothing about getting high, but he'd heard it somewhere, and he was already repeating it. And man, I don't know. Dozell, you're a pastor. I'm a pastor. I don't know. You know, I'm not one of those. I can't. I come Sunday to preach the word. I'm gonna say a little something maybe about what's going on around us, but I ain't spending my time doing what you and I are doing tonight, not in the context of a Sunday worship service. So we got to find some mechanism or some way to tell our people, wake up, wake up. I mean, when you use somebody's film clip, you got to give credit. But at the end of Spike Lee's seminal movie, Do the Right Thing, there's that thing that's wake up,
Yeah.
wake up. Same thing at the end of school days. Wake up, wake up. Dozell, our people got to wake up, Doc, and it's our job to try to help wake them up.
So that word "wake" or "woke" is almost like the sign of the cross to a vampire, to that guy in the state house. He is allergic to the word "woke," and hopefully he won't have to worry about it in a couple of months. Listen, Pastor, thank you for coming on. I'm being respectful and professional tonight, but that's my friend, Brother Anthony Burrell. That's my God friend. And thank you for coming on tonight, because I couldn't get any of those other people right here in the voter rights struggle, but I knew you would have a reference of history and wokeness that would help us tonight to spur others on to vote. Thank you so kindly, Mike. Thank you for your comments, man. We'll be right back here next week, and Kim will be in the house. I don't know. I'll be on the road, but I'll be in front of a camera somewhere, because the dialogue goes on every Monday night. Tonight, we want to give one vent before we go out the door to Hispanic Awareness Week, and we're going to do at least a great portion of our show on next Monday night. We're going to devote to Hispanic awareness. But tonight, we want to shout out. We want to mention Freddie Prinze. Freddie Prinze was a comedian par excellence, to the Hispanic community. And those of you like my friend Pastor Burrell and I who remember him, he was the star of the TV program of Chico and the Man. And Chico and the Man followed Sanford and Son. And so you had an actual power block hour of comedy. And it featured a minority club comedian in Red Fox, and you had a stand-up comedian in Freddie Prince. And Freddie Prince more than carried his own with his show, Chico and the Man. We appreciate this star, this loving spirit. His son, you see him, was a star also, Freddie Prince Jr. Freddie Prince left us much too soon. Unfortunately, he was depressant, and that's what led to his eventual death. But we are grateful to God for sending him for the laughs, the laughter, and the joy that he brought all of us on Monday nights and through Median and in live appearances. Thank you, a very powerful brother, a Hispanic brother, on this Hispanic awareness moment. We remember you, Brother Freddie Prince. The dialogue will be right back here next Monday night. We'll look to see you at 8 o'clock. Sign on. Tell somebody about it. Tell Paul, tell Saul, tell them all. That's what they say in radio, that the dialogue is right back here at 8 o'clock. We're looking for you. KV will be here in the house Monday night. Have a great week, everybody. We'll see you next time.